So were there actually witches and wizards walking around New Mexico casting spells on people?
Yes, there were. If you go to New Mexico in the 1600s and the 1700s, you have to remember that New Mexico was a cauldron of different peoples. And all of these people had a magical worldview where spirits, angels, and demons and witches were real to them.
At this time, I mean, what are we talking about? What did it look like?
Brujeria was witchcraft, okay? And a lot of what we see in the documents in the 1600s and 1700s looks like what you find in documents in Spain. It's a mixture of folklore, superstition, and Christian theology, okay? And what it was witchcraft. At the heart of witchcraft was the idea that there was a pact with the devil. And there's an invoking of spirits. And with witchcraft, there's the threat of communal witchcraft, that communities are getting involved and committing heresy. In other words, crimes against the church, practicing religious expression outside what the church taught. Hechiceria or sorcery tended to be more individual, a person who might use plants to excite love or to hurt someone, to poison them.
Are there recorded cases of brujeria in New Mexico?
Yes, we have cases going back to 1607 Inquisition investigations into mainly women who were of the casta or mixed blood class, people who were poor. Maybe they were half Indian and half Spanish, or mulattoes, half African and half Spanish. They would also be accused of practicing witchcraft, brujeria, or sorcery, hechiceria. So we have cases in the 1600s and well into the 1700s and into the 1800s.
Is there one that you could tell us about in particular?
One of the more notorious cases was the Abiquiu witchcraft trials of the 1760s. This happened when a priest, Fray Juan José Toledo, accused the Genízaro Indians of practicing witchcraft and sorcery and killing people and bewitching them. But the problem was they were hanging on to their culture, of course, and their religious and spiritual practices. So for Franciscan priests and for the Hispanic people, they would look at what the Genízaros were doing and see something demonic or as witchcraft.
So the supernatural was clearly a reality for a lot of people around this time. Why were people thinking this way?
We have to remember, brujeria y hechiceria, witchcraft and sorcery, were a form of resistance. These were ways that people who had no power could get power. And it was a way of challenging Spanish economic, political, and religious systems that some of these folks felt were oppressing them.
Was it about defining good and evil?
Clearly that was part of it, especially from the Catholic perspective. The Franciscan priests that were coming up here in the 1600s and 1700s, they felt that there was an imminent battle between God and Satan taking place, and that it was their job to root out evil and the devil everywhere they saw it. So they perceived Native American religions as demonic, and therefore practices that needed to be put down and destroyed and replaced with Catholic Christianity.
And on the other side, the people who were being accused perhaps of brujeria saw these people as evil.
Well, sure, it's all in your perspective. The Pueblo people already had their own religious practices. The Genízaro people were a mix of people from the Kiowa communities, Utes, Pawnee, Comanche, Apache, Navajo. So they had their own world perspectives and forms of witchcraft. But they did want to hang on to their cultures, much as the Jews and Muslims of Spain wanted to hang on to theirs, in spite of being forced to accept Catholicism in 1492. So you had that real and ideal. The ideal was what the church and state said to do, and then the reality was what people were actually doing.
It sounds like it was a battle for the soul of the people.
For them, it was. It was a battle for the soul of New Mexico, but it was also a political and economic battle. People wanted to assert themselves. If they felt they were being oppressed by an encomienda system or by a religious or a political system, they could use witchcraft as psychological warfare and physical. Sorcery was how they would poison people and get your enemies out of the way. In the 1670s, some Pueblo Indians were brought to Santa Fe, and a few of them were executed and others were punished for the crime of witchcraft. They were actually practicing their religion because they were skeptical of Catholicism, and there were droughts and famines, and they felt that abandoning their old religion had brought punishment to them. Well, the Spanish priests and Spanish civil authorities didn't like that, so they punished them, and that planted the seeds for the Pueblo Revolt. And the idea that the Pueblos had to throw off Spanish rule in order to survive culturally.
So centuries later, what are we left with? How do you think superstition has shaped our history?
I think it tells us a lot about our ancestors here in New Mexico and a lot about ourselves. It's not something that's just in the past. We still have people today, right here in New Mexico, who believe in witches. The idea that if you see a ball of fire flying through the air, it's a witch. Or if somebody gets sick, especially a little baby, when I was growing up, they used to say, if somebody had a baby, don't look at the baby too much or you'll give it mal ojo, and the baby might get sick.
The evil eye.
Evil eye, yes. So these ideas come through the centuries and they stay with us. You know, they say if you're walking along a road and you see an owl in a tree, tell it, mañana vengas por sal. Tomorrow you'll come for salt. And the next day, if somebody knocks at your door and asks to borrow salt, they're a witch. So these are ideas that are still with us. They persist.
How has that affected our history?
It's enhanced it, I think. I think it's augmented it. It's made it more interesting. I look with great respect and with open eyes when I study this, because I have a great amount of respect for all of our ancestors, whether they were Pueblo, Genízaro, Spanish, Mexican. Americans had their own versions of witchcraft beliefs in places like Pennsylvania or Kentucky. You know, it's everywhere. It's a universal idea. I think we need to know not just our history, but we need to know the folklore that informed our ancestors, and it also tells us why we are who we are. So it's all there for us to see if we look closely.
So after all this research, do you believe in witches?
I believe in witches impacting history. I believe that people thought everywhere in New Mexico there were spirits and angels and demons. And I'm open to that. I'm open to that because I think it's important to respect and learn from our ancestors and our elders.